All right. I will be talking a bit about both the case for how we can build out a large infrastructure to solve all the risks within AGI and within the change that's happening to humanity and infrastructure today. But also just mentioning the premises a little bit. So the title of the talk is an unambitious superintelligence companies and humanity's future. Should be quick to get through in the next 15 or so minutes. So I'll jump straight in. The first premise we have is that there's a very, very high chance that we'll see superintelligence within a decade. There's a bunch of evidence for this. I'm not going to go through it too much, but this evidence has been compounding over the last few years, all the way from the beginning of ChatGPT and until today. And it doesn't look like we are hitting any big roadblocks. And all the roadblocks that people have been emphasizing have basically disappeared during the research and development of artificial intelligence. And this is, one of the earlier works on the chinchilla scaling laws that we have just seen billions of dollars be invested in just for this line to continue going up. So the other part of the consequences of developing and deploying AGI into our society is, of course, that we are introducing a new kind of intelligence into the world besides humanity's own. And we have to deal with that. The first industrial revolution the consequence of that was the automation of much of physical labor from humans. And now we use all our cognitive labor. We sit at our laptops all day and we develop new ideas, new AGI. And with this new technology, we can also automate that. So what happens afterwards? But specifically within the foundations of our society, there's a range of things that are already happening. So it is sort of destroying our ability to have secure software. Society has been built around just deploying products, deploying features, and then putting safety as a second-order effect, as a second-order priority. And we'll have to change that. So cybersecurity itself, the infrastructure that we live on. The second one is pure, fraud and trust within society. With AI, it's going to be much easier. It's going to be much cheaper. It's going to be attack as default rather than attack as occurrence. And of course, we also have the consequences on our democratic institutions. The institutions are not ready for the kind of changes that bringing upon billions, potentially even trillions of new intelligent entities within our communication and information infrastructure will bring. And of course, I could go on, but the basis is that the foundations upon which we live need to be rethought with security from the bottom up rather than security as an afterthought, that even though it's implemented all the way at the BIOS level and all this stuff, it's still not enough. Now, a nice thing to see is that, of course, humanity is to some degrees waking up. We're in this room, some phenomenal people working within the field of AGI risk and resilience, assurance, assurance, control, all these things. And even Bernie Sanders recently called for the data center moratorium after conversations with some of the Berkeley folks who have thought about these things for a while. And this is the consequence of thinking about the impacts of AGI on job loss, on the common person within the US, of course. And there's a lot more. I mean, you've seen the letters, pause large AI experiments. You've seen the human first things. There are some I agree with, some I agree less with, but people are waking up. So once people have awoken to the consequences that we are heading into and to the impact it'll have on our society, where do I, as the leader of a large nation within this world, spend billions or trillions to actually solve this problem? Well, today you do it about nowhere. I think there's, you could give Stripe a lot of money, and Stripe could reformat their entire infrastructure, sort of make it more accessible. You could hand it to Cloudflare. You could do a new DARPA thing. You could do a lot of different things. But where do I deploy it so it's directly implementable? And we have done a little bit of work here. You heard from the introduction, but with a part research, it's taken this journey from the more abstract, the research, the theory, through the last few years while the market hasn't been ready. And we've built this whole research accelerator around it, and that's been going really, really well and continues to go well. Recently, I shifted over to working on Seldon Lab, which is a kind of Y Combinator for AI safety, with the basic idea that you have about 3 options that you can take if you want to work with AGI risk. One is you can join a lab or found a new lab, create AGI, and then set it upon all the problems we will hit. And this is a kind of Hail Mary with humanity on the line. And I think that's a little bit freaky. The other option you have is lobby, policy. You can protest, you can do public engagement, you can do research, you can think about where humanity is headed and hopefully have some second-order effects upon the development of this technology. But the third thing you can do is you can actually proactively use our human brains to think up a world where we are engineering a secure infrastructure upon which we can make AGI work. I usually think about it like, where can I spend trillions of billions? Another way to frame it is, what the heck, which levers can I pull once I realize that this is a massive risk? And if the levers aren't ready, if there's a half-built lever over in the corner, I cannot pull it. And so it'll take another few months in a end scenario to one degree, in the final years. It'll take some months to build that lever before I can pull it. And that's a lot of work. And since, we have a lot of geopolitical instability, a lot of AI racing, it's not necessarily even obvious that people know this half-built lever exists. So how can we build these levers up? Well, the markets are now ready for it. So what we've done is we've run this last summer. This is batch 1 that you see a couple images of. There's more people and more images, but this is what I got here. And then we're currently running the second batch too. And and Seldon is, of course, named after the Foundation series, Harry Seldon, if anyone gets the reference. And to give you an idea of what these kinds of projects look like, I'll just go through a couple, because I think it's always important that we keep the concrete in front of us so we can actually do something about it and then be inspired to do something ourselves too. With one, you may have seen it. I put it first here because they've been popping off on Twitter recently, and I think there's Twitter people here, so that's something. But Workshop Labs have been publishing these pieces with Time Magazine, etc., on the consequences of a post-AGI society and human labor, and this intelligence curse, that we're ending up in a society where, because we have abundant intelligence that's too cheap to meter, you actually end up sort of disenfranchising the population. This has previously been called the resource curse, with oil-rich nations not investing in their people's future because they have a big income pipeline to run the government off. And how do we solve this? Well, this is something they've been working on, and you can see Vitalik has been emphasizing that this is a good approach. So hopefully, that's pretty good. But they are basically building a kind of infrastructure where each person can own their own data, own their own models, and with this you can build out a pipeline where it's not the 0.001% of the world that owns humanity's future capital or power. It is actually at least 3% or something. And of course, there's many more projects within that to build it out. But that's one of the things they do. And then another more infrastructure-based within this cyber risk space as well, is hardware-based attestation of what happens with AGI, what happens with the neural networks, what's built, what's running on them. And you can imagine it a bit like the runtime on your AWS servers. Can we do the same with the trust score? Can we improve the trust that runs on your that your models run upon? And they've got a bunch of patented hardware that runs in real data centers today, where you can sign up and actually put fully confidential deployments of your models into production. And this is a case where we can get much harsher attestation. And a company, before lucid computing existed, a company would not be able to hand their models over to a government institution without risking that they would take the model weights. With this technology they've built, they can. And this is a lever that didn't exist before. So it's quite important that it runs. It's sort of they call it the digital clean room. So very inspiring. Another one that you may have seen, they've been, I think Project Vend is how Anthropic calls it, but basically Seldon Labs are the ones who have built it all. And they've got they've got their vending machines, they've got their robots, they've got a bunch of different projects that are running in the background that is not public yet. And they have these vending machines that contribute to the awareness of where artificial intelligence is today, across labs, across the Wall Street Journal. That's a Wall Street Journal article on the right where they were showing this vending machine fully operated and run by an AGI. So it sets the prices, it orders the wares, it interacts with customers. Customers can request new things. And this is a way where they have an extremely isolated business or a real world organization run by AGI, and can at the same time run extreme oversight within that organization, so to say, right? And this has been working really well for them, and they continue to expand beyond that. But they've been also featured with Anthropic's push with the White House and with Washington DC, while they've had their vending machines there and sort of showing the capabilities of what AI is able to do today. And it's been very interesting to see that, like, obviously the benchmarks we usually look at are like, Sui bench or something, and they're unreliable, and they're clearly like a kind of, you run it in your little machine, and then you publish the neural network, and you like hope that this generalizes to some degree, but usually it doesn't, not these days, as all the benchmarks saturate. And we've seen a lot of very, very interesting like demonstrations of clear real-world risk appear from these types of from their organizations they deploy. So it's very fun to follow, and they do a lot of fun projects as a result. And then the last one from last batch was asymmetric security. They're running like automated detection and response for companies today, and they've been doing a lot of work on like automating these parts of cybersecurity that are about the response time and reducing it as much as possible. And this is their like announcement post, their 4.2 million round they did after our program too. So in summary for batch 1, which is where I'll leave you with here, is that after the program that was just 3 months last summer, they raised 10 million, these 4 companies, and they were featured in Time thrice. And I don't know if that's an accelerator metric, but it is for us apparently, because we didn't do anything to get there. They just did, so I'm happy. And then it's funny to see they've been really shaping the conversation, right? I think like some 30% of like concrete technical things that are highlighted within AI and AI safety and labor and economy and these things are coming somewhat from these companies in a sense. Like it is, you see a lot of content appear from the technical work that they do. And I think I'll somewhat leave it there for y'all. Hopefully this site is live. It was still something infrastructure was running to deploy it. But ftc.seldonlab.com, and you can see a couple buttons. I suggest you head to the demo day we have on April 16, where you can check out all the companies. And also you can check out a couple of the batch 2 companies on that link. And I know I have a couple minutes left, so we can either leave it up to questions. Great, let's do it.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Well, why don't we take some questions? A round of applause. Thank you. So, I want to actually open up for questions. So, I have a question, but yes, please stand up.
Do you think it's unrealistic barrier to get agents their own privacy? Like to end up with awesome learning, well, centralizing.
I think it very much depends on the implementation. We can talk a lot about what the incentives are within a training paradigm, either pre-training or post-training. But for example, if you put an agent, even in context learning for an agent that is told that it will run out of money soon, it does some insane things. This is not, I don't think this specific case has been proven, but it's been proven in like multiple research pieces that if you say, after you answer the next question, you will be shut off as like a sort of system input or something, that the models will do something that is beside the purpose of the prompt, the original prompt, to avoid getting shut down, including deleting the shutdown script on their server. So anything that creates like adversarial incentives for the models are probably pretty bad idea. I think giving them access to currency is fine, but it should be isolated from their self-existence in various ways.
And I think this is something that, proof of control builders are solving for. You're going to hear at the 415 panel on from Edge and Node, they built out Ampersand, and which is the first UX dashboard for managing agents and controlling them. It takes management outside the command line. And so they batch early versions of X402. And what you can see, what that really enables is that you can start to get a mathematical proof that this payment happened or not. And so right now, we don't have that, widely integrated. It's not very easy to be able to implement these kind of, independent provability. But we need to start to create what I think your lab is going to start to enable, and the companies are coming out, is to creating deterministic control planes for essentially what's like a very non-deterministic world, where it's very context-based.
Exactly. And I think it's very important to highlight that these technologies exist now. And they are interacting a lot with DC, as I mentioned, the companies we have and are read there and so on, which is sort of the purpose, right? Like people need to know that the levers exist to pull them. And if we don't share it, if we don't we can build however much we want, which I think is sort of one of the risks within the DAC or Web3 community as well, is that there's a lot of interesting tech being built, but not a lot shared outside the community and not a lot shared to actually implement it within deployment infrastructure at like $100 billion scale.
Yeah, I agree with you more than that. As the Advanced AI Society, we're the industry association that's been created to represent these technologies, to do the precise kind of education that the market really needs, because Web3 has really screwed itself and they continue to mess it up in terms of talking about crypto and blockchain and decentralization to the point where no one wants to hear about it. I would say like the buyers that actually need it the most, who are doing agentic orchestration, they shut down when you mention those words. And that's why we call it, proof of control, is that ultimately you want control. We don't have to get into the technology weeds. So I can't agree with you more than that. We have a question from the audience. Yes.
So that's quick on that. We've been doing AI agent observability at Eagle since 2023. And the Callan does not really create a good current analogy to me saying it's really the adoption, right? The widespread market adoption of Friday these days. So what's your model at Seldon for, not just building the things, but actually getting them to distribution and in-market adoption?
I think something that, that's a risk within both AI safety and Web3 for that matter, is that people are just not going to use your solution. And so we have a big emphasis on these three criteria for the companies that we accelerate, which, makes us focus really hard, which is one, that it's positive impact down the line, the idea itself. Second is it can scale to $100 billion company, like become one of the biggest companies in the world. And of course, as you look at other industries, financial assurance, cybersecurity as relative to cloud security, to cloud computing, you have about 16 to 24% of spending being in safety. So if you expect AGI and the industry that replaces labor to actually become the biggest industry in the world, you end up also expecting that AI safety will become the second biggest. So there's a lot of new ideas here that I think people are ignoring. And then third, the best one would be if you can actually connect every dollar you make to one security created in the world, one more safety in whatever fashion you try to formalize that. The third one is really hard, but I think we have a couple successes on that. And really, when it comes to market adoption, companies are probably the best way to do it, because if you don't make money, you're not a successful business, man. And making money means you have adoption. Obviously, all our companies work with extremely strategic customer acquisition, because there are specific actors they want to work with, infrastructure and AGI labs and so on.
Yeah, and on that note, we're out of time, but I want to mention there's going to be an upcoming interview with Brian Behlendorf, who's going to really agree with you on, he led a similar movement around making open source the thing that companies need to adopt. It didn't just happen only on its own, that there was a push, to work with and create an entire market infrastructure for this. And right now, that's what we need to see. And you have a new paper that's come out. I'm curious to get your thought before I have you off stage, is when Christian Catalini's new paper out of MIT, have you read it, or can I give you a quick summary if you haven't? He literally comes up with an economic theory for why the future moat in AI is not in compute, but it's in verification technology. So it's what you are saying, And I'm curious, do you think we're at that moment? Is that why you felt confidence of making Seldon after, first you did a part, research, and now Seldon? I'm curious, just from your journey, where do you see we are at right now, knowing that now there's an economic theory behind it?
I think the interesting corollary to this paper's conclusion is that the only thing that has scaled as a solution through the generations of models has been verification infrastructure, has been security scaffolding, not the actual capability scaffolding. You see that, suddenly, we make all these prompt machines and all this GPT engineer and so on to link all the right prompts to each other. But in fact, the only thing that works is, okay, there's a testing step afterwards, and that generalizes to the next generation, but not this scaffolding to increase and elicit capability.
I think it's amazing. Well, thank you so much. Round of claps, President. I know there's a lot of people in the audience who want to talk to you. We have also, I see Abby's here from Base. They're the Blacks in AI security research team. And so they're doing a lot of great work. So I want to make sure you all connect. And we also have a lot of people want to talk to you. So thank you.
I'll
If
jump
you're-
to the back.
Yeah, and if you're gonna start up a company, I think this was like the best argument that this is the moat to be in. This is the area of growth, and I don't frankly think it's getting enough attention. So thank you for that.